Hey, Melissa here. I'm in Dragonman's Military Museum. We are open today, so that's why I'm in here, because I don't want to get interrupted from customers coming on in. But this video is a little bit different than really probably ones that Mel is putting out on our page and ones that I generally do, just showing off inventory. But in the past, I've kind of kept you guys updated on some political stuff. Here in Colorado, this upcoming election is actually a really big one because it deals with state measures. Every 2 years, we vote on things that directly impact the state, whereas every other year we vote on things that just directly impact your municipality. And this ballot covers everything from abortion to the definition of marriage to increasing parole eligibility to allocating $350 million to law enforcement, anywhere from school choice with Amendment 80. And it just goes on and on. We have a lot of really important stuff in our ballots this November, and there's 14 initiatives on the ballot. There are going to be amendments and propositions. Amendments are a measure that directly amend the Constitution and the Colorado Constitution, items in there, and then the propositions are will essentially change statutory laws. There's 14 initiatives on our ballot. Just going to talk about Proposition KK, Proposition 131 and 127. So the excise tax that they want to impose on firearms, ammo, and gun accessories. And then also the Proposition 131, ranked choice voting. They want to change the way that we do elections here. And I feel like you guys should be informed on that one because it is actually really confusing to understand if you don't do your research. So just to educate you guys and hopefully make it a little bit more simplified. And then the last one on the banning of mountain lion hunting here in Colorado. So while you might think that that's, a no-brainer or, pretty easy to figure out, there is some, other implications from that proposition that will have an effect on hunters. So here in Colorado, if you want to watch the video, this will directly impact you. If you're watching from out of state, these are initiatives that could come to your state. At the very end, I'm going to talk about some candidates that I think you guys should all be watching here in the state, depending on what district you live in, and some districts that can be flipped because we do have a super majority Democrat legislative here in Colorado. So just to balance things out, some of those districts can be flipped, and I'm going to talk about which ones those are and some people to keep in mind when you're going to go to the polls. All right, so let's get into it. Obviously, the first one, excise tax for firearms. They're calling it Proposition KK. They essentially want to allocate $30 million from the proceeds generated from this sin tax. And it'll be an additional 6.5% on your firearms, ammo, and firearm accessories. In the booklet, when you actually read through the measure, they give you this example where it just shows if someone buys a gun for $900, they will essentially pay 6.5%, and that'll be like $60. I'm really confused why they didn't put the additional tax that people already pay. So out here at Dragonman's, it's only 5.13%, but in town, it's 9.6%. So you add on another 6.5% on top of that, the person is not just paying $60 on sales tax. They're going to be paying much more than that because it'll be about 15% sales tax when you go to buy that firearm, that ammo, or those firearm accessories. So this will probably, if it passes, a lot of people will be going out of state, buying online to avoid that tax. And it'll really take away from small businesses or any sort of business that deals with firearms here in the state. They are already doing this on marijuana and cigarettes, things that are typically like a vice in your life and not a necessity. In my opinion, firearms are a necessity. We use them to protect ourselves, to protect our families, and to keep a checks and balances with our own government. So to me, that sounds like a necessity. And actually during COVID, when our governor ordered that, non-necessity businesses be shut down, I find it interesting that he said that firearms were a necessity business and therefore should remain open. And therefore we were able to remain open during COVID. So now they want to call it a sin tax, where owning a firearm and buying a firearm is not a sin. It should not be taxed. And I don't know why it's fallen into that category. The money that it will generate will go to victims of crime services. So they really focus in on victims of domestic violence. I've said this time and time again, I am a huge advocate for women, for men who have, been in domestically violent, situations and need to go get services and stuff. I'm not against funding those services whatsoever. I just don't understand why they're coming after firearm owners for sin tax when it's a necessity. They wouldn't be going after people for food, for gas. They're not taking any of that money from those necessity products. In addition to that, they are saying in this proposition they want to allocate $1 million to school security grant programs. I did the math, there's 927 schools in Colorado. That would mean that each school gets $518 towards security. Woohoo! Thank you so much for that. I'm sure they will do a lot with that $518. Then they want to put $5 million towards veterans' mental health services. Well, there's about 40,000 veterans in the state, and that would come down to $14.70. Granted, not all of them will need those services, but they already get these services through the VA. So I highly encourage you guys, while I do want the victims of crime services to get allocated funding, they are getting funding currently from people who are convicted of those crimes, and they are forced to pay. There's not like there is no money towards those already. They just want more money, and if needed, I understand that, and that's fine. I just think that they should figure out a different way to raise that money. All right, turning the tables a little bit to Proposition 131, the ranked choice voting, or as it says, the establishing all candidate primary and ranked choice voting general elections. Now, Governor Polis in July, I believe, had already issued a letter stating that this way of doing elections went against the Colorado Constitution because it was not simple, it was not easy to understand, and it was not time efficient. So how it even got on the ballot, I'm really confused about. I do know that there is one guy behind it who has put in about $1.6 million to just this initiative alone to get it on the ballot. So I find that really interesting. And then he's also part of a group that is putting towards other states to get this on their ballots, $9.6 million. So they're essentially just buying this initiative into the ballot, and now we're all forced to vote on it. Additionally, even Democrat Representative Emily Sirota here in Colorado, she voted on a lot of anti-gun initiatives in the last legislative session, but she even said about this initiative, this ranked choice voting, that it needed more testing before it was finally implemented into a general election, and that it should not go into effect until 2028. Polis actually agreed with her, but then somehow it made it on the ballot this year to be implemented in 2026. Polis can actually still veto this initiative out if it passes. So I really hope he does if it does pass, but based off of the amount of money that was thrown into this, it would be hopeful to think that they could just toss it out, but I think based off of the amount of money spent, $1.2 million alone just in advertising, it is on our November ballot. A lot of people will say that big money donors will have a direct influence on this ranked choice voting. All right, so let's get into the complexities of how the ranked choice voting works. So currently, our system is that our parties, through caucuses, they pick whichever primary candidates they would like to see in the party, run in the primaries, and generally it's anywhere from like 2 to 5 people. So it's not just picking 2 people or so. You get, a lot of people who are running in the primaries. If the libertarian opponents have people running, then they'll have a primary. And then you get different ballots. So the unaffiliated voters will get a Democrat and a Republican ballot, and then they can only choose to send in one. So I get why they don't like that, and that this is appealing. There'll be obviously Republicans, Democrats get their each ballot. But at the end of the day, when it comes to general election, you could just vote for the Libertarian or the Green Party candidate. The way that this ranked choice voting works is a little bit questionable as to who would really get in. And a lot of states that have already implemented, or counties, which I know Alaska implemented it, and they had a Democrat win in Alaska, which was wild. And most people didn't understand what just happened. It was very surprising. And it was a third party candidate. And then also here in Boulder, the candidate who won, everyone was just amazed. And not all, but a lot of states that have implemented it are not happy with it. They're trying to figure out how they can repeal it. Come the primaries, everyone gets all of the candidates' names on their ballot. So it's called the jungle primary, and you get to rank all of the candidates by your most favored to your least favored. Then come the general election. There's 4 candidates that generally have that got the most, the highest ranking. Now, in order to win, you have to get at least 50% of the votes. So that generally never happens. So the first, round does not shell out a winner. So they essentially will then take the candidate with the lowest percentage. That person gets voted out. But the ballots from that person are then used, their second choice of those ballots are used to then go towards the 3 candidates that are still running. Okay, if that still does not have a candidate with over 50% outcome, then again, they'll do another round where they take out the person with the lowest percentage and then use the third party choices of those ballots and then redistribute them to now the 2 candidates that are still standing to get ultimately over 50%. Some elections that were done, and a lot of times it was a third candidate choice that won. And that's why a lot of these elections are turning out outcomes where, people are just totally surprised. You're like, it wasn't the first or the second. I could have sworn that it would be. And now it's the third choice. So I just don't feel like people should be forced to choose candidates that they wouldn't even have voted for to begin with. It could completely vote out an entire party of candidates. And I just don't really feel like this is the best method for an election. If people want that Libertarian or Green Party candidate, then just vote for them at the general election. And if they have the most votes, then they'll get in. I feel like this sort of system pisses off everybody, whereas the way that we do elections now only, make half the people mad. So you can't make everyone satisfied, but, you're either going to, only really make, percentage of people upset. But I feel like the ranked choice voting will make everyone upset because it will come down to a third ranked candidate. And then people also say that it will come down to which candidate has the most money to run the most ads. And it'll now be a way for big money people to control elections. And it really won't give those people who couldn't really fund their campaigns a fighting chance. So will that Libertarian have enough funding? Will that Green Party candidate have enough funding? I don't know. I think it's hard to say whether they would. I do think that a Democrat or potentially a Republican, it could work in both favors, potentially could have more money. But right now in Colorado, Democrats have the most funding by far. There's a huge ratio difference between Republican funding and Democrat funding. So who do you think is going to win in Colorado? Just do your research and make a very educated choice on Proposition 131. Dig a little bit deeper, start reading up on it, and figure out why a big group solely has put in $9.6 million to get this initiative out on ballots across 5 different states, but then also read up on how 5 other states banned this from even being an option on their ballot. So some things you got to look into. So now on to the last proposition, which is 127, and they essentially called it prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. Essentially a group, a animal rights activist group called Cats Are Not Trophies, implemented this initiative. And in order to get an initiative on the ballot, by the way, you have to get like 124,238 signatures. So obviously there were some people that were for it because they did sign for it. Maybe they didn't do their research either. You're kind of pulled over, after you're leaving the grocery store. Hey, will you sign this? And people just, sign away without doing a lot of research. But essentially it is on the ballot. We get to vote on it. We have a little bit more time to make an educated opinion about it. This proposition will say that it will, take away the chance to hunt mountain lions and lynx and bobcats for trophies. So as many know, they already released wolves back into wildlife here in Colorado. So those are actually eating a lot of deer, a lot of elk that hunters would be getting tags for. And now you take away, hunting of mountain lions. There's just really not going to be a whole lot left over for hunters to get those elk tags, to get those deer tags. The biggest issue with it, in addition to that, because that's pretty big, it essentially would remove mountain lions from the definition of big game, making landowners ineligible for state reimbursement for any damage caused by a mountain lion or these other animals. So if something is, ruined as a result from a mountain lion, on your property or killing livestock or so forth, you won't really be getting reimbursement from the state, whereas normally you would be. So that's also an issue as well. All right, that's really all I have for you guys. I do give out mountain lion tags, and generally, of those tags, there's this very small percentage of people who actually do get a mountain lion. So just because you might see like, that there are people hunting them doesn't mean that they always catch one. So I would encourage you to vote no on this. Obviously, I don't like inhumane practices when it comes to hunting. However, I just really see a lot of hunters that, really respect the animals, that kill them in a very humane way. And it's very rare that you see someone kill a mountain lion or one of these animals in a very inhumane way. It's extremely rare, too rare to really put a law in place against it. Are there going to always be shitty people in the world? Yeah, definitely. But should it have an impact on all the other hunters out there to not pull tags on elk and deer and mule deer? So just take that all into account, especially with the wolves that have additionally been released here in Colorado. There's a lot of other stuff on this ballot, which leads me to the last part of this video to talk about the houses that we could flip that are critical races here in Colorado. So those races include Jeff Hurd for Congressional District 3 and Gabe Evans for Congressional District 8. So these Republican candidates do have a slight narrow margin that they could flip those congressional seats here in Colorado. So definitely vote for Gabe or Jeff. And also on a House district level, and then I'm going to get to Senate districts, Ryan Gonzalez in District 50. I'm also going to put a link in here to allow you to put in your zip code, and it'll let you know what district you're in. So Ryan Gonzalez for House District 50, Matt Burcham for House District 43, Caleb Waller for House District 57, Rebecca Keltie, she is going up against Stephanie Vigil. Very important race. If you look up what Stephanie Vigil is for, it's like wild. She essentially wants like children to be adults by 12 years old and doesn't really care if there's felonies for, sex violators, and it just is wild. So Rebecca Keltie is her running opponent. She has a really good head on her shoulders. I've had many conversations with her. She's, just a solid person with integrity, and I would just highly recommend voting for Keltie. She's in House District 16, which is here in Colorado Springs. Also, Dan Woog for House District 19, and then George Mumma for House District 25. If you want to donate to any of these campaigns, generally you can just do a search for their name, their first and last .com or .org. All right, on the Senate seats, so Robyn Carnes for Senate District 16, Scott Bright for Senate District 13, Stan VanderWerf in District 12, and then Marc Catlin for District 5, and Cleave Simpson for District 6. Okay, so there's about, 13, 14 different candidates there that could potentially win by a slim margin if they get voted in, allowing them to flip a seat and neutralize our legislative House and Senate here in Colorado to make things a little bit more even for us. Currently, as it stands, like whatever the Democrats want to push, they can basically just get in because they do hold a supermajority. If these houses and Senate seats are flipped, then that'll actually just make us from being a supermajority to just a majority Democrat. So yay for us, but it does help a little bit to just make it a little bit more fair and give the other voices and constituents in this state a chance. All right, with that being said, take all of that in when you're filling out your ballot here in Colorado, and I guess that's it. So my next video will not have anything to do with politics. I know that most people don't really like these videos, and yes, we're a firearm store, so why is it even my business to be making these videos? Well, it's my moral responsibility as a resident of Colorado, especially if we have a platform, to just give some education behind some of these because I feel like most voters out there, they just don't do their homework. And so I would really like to just, inform you guys if I can, and hopefully it makes an impact. So we'll see. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we see you down here at Dragonman's. We have our Rocky Mountain Range Day, October 26th, and we'll be open all winter long. The museum does close in November, so come out and see the museum, this beautiful museum, before it closes, and it will reopen in April. So thank you for watching, and take care.